For centuries, Alderaan stood as a beacon of hope in the Republic. The Empire came.
I have chosen to test this station's destructive power on your home planet of Alderaan.
Peace while you suffer. The Emperor drowns you in black waters.
He wants me to be Darth Revan again. Serve him as I did centuries ago. He made me a Sith Lord and named me Darth Revan.
The Force does not control you. You saved Ugantia using something you thought was important. But your motives are still aligned with the Jedi Code.
To arms, men! Defend the throne!
Anakin Skywalker was weak. I destroyed him. He was weak and foolish like his father. So I destroyed him.
Master Windu, you have fought gallantly. Worthy of recognition in the archives of the Jedi. It is finished.
To them it is.
I have been waiting for you. Is it true that he is the chosen one?
It's Alex,
Here's Harrison.
and welcome back to State of the Galaxy. So, Harrison, you have some topics that you want to cover today.
Well, poor Star Wars actors bullied off of social media.
Yeah, I'm sure that most people, if you're part of Star Wars fan pages or just take a look at the news in general, you're probably aware that the actress who played Rose in The Last Jedi has been getting quite a lot of heat, not just sexist but also racist remarks from members of the so-called Star Wars fan base.
Shame to be in their fan base,
I
really.
think it's just another example of how people act online being a quote-unquote anonymous presence. Yeah, and I think it's appalling, to be fair. You're more than welcome to vocalise about the character and say that you don't like the character, but her acting wasn't shabby in the slightest.
No.
And she did what she was, at the end of the day, employed to do. So you can't just start attacking those things because that is completely
I
irrelevant.
mean, if you want to attack someone, attack LucasArts about it, not just target the actor. If you're unhappy about it and you're that vocally inclined...
But I don't
direct
understand
it
how
at-
it sparked to that. It's
No,
like
direct it at the studio if you're going to moan about the film.
I mean,
you know what
I don't go through the films that I like that have like bad moments from certain actors. I don't go through Star Wars Episode 1, for example, and it's like I love the Battle of the Fates and I love the pod racing, but I really don't like Baby Anakin. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go on his Instagram or whatever and tell him I hate him because he's white. No.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to attack something, take it to the studio who made the film. Not like, what's the point of targeting the actress?
Yeah.
What's it really going to achieve? She can't like change her character, can she? She's not in charge of creative development.
No,
She's not in charge of how a character's told to be.
because
Really?
because I mean I shouldn't have to tell anyone this because if you're clever you should know it anyway, but at the end of the day how the industry works is that you are the talent and that's it. If you are an actor or actress, you are the talent. You are directed by director, producer, and then choreographers on stage. You are told what to do and you are told how to do it. It's up to your acting prowess to make that character your own, but that's literally the only kind of control you get. And even then, they can say, no, that's not how we want. Because, for example, like Nicolas Cage, if we address some other forms of media, when he was in The Sorcerer's Apprentice, that was not the Nicolas Cage that we know from certain other things. It was monotone, boring, and annoying. There was no cage rage, which is his usual kind of signature for being in films or any kind of media.
Film, really.
Yeah, so you can't say even then that the actor they barely have any kind of control over.
He's not actually been in any films since like Ghost Rider 2, to be honest, really, hasn't he?
Was The Sorcerer's Apprentice after that, or was?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
I think it may have been just after that
Probably.
because it was a fairly new film, but
But yeah, either way, he's not been in films for a while.
No.
Poor Cage Rage.
but yeah. So I find it disgusting how people have reacted, and if you've looked on our fan page, you'll see that our friend Bob has constructed a very well worded post addressing just that very issue, and I'm 100% behind him on it, because it's absolutely not fair that people should be harassed through doing that. And it was also quite sad because she mentioned that she was so happy to be part of that universe. She was in truth a fan. And people would probably then home in on that and say, oh, because she was a fan, she should have done a better job and stuff. But she still has no control whether you're a fan or not.
And as well, I've heard rumours that she might even consider dropping out of Star Wars 9.
Wow.
Which is a bit of a shame, really, if it's basically ruining someone's career. Obviously, everyone wants to be in Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's Star Wars, isn't it? Even if it's the new films that some people view as terrible and worse than other films, whatever. Everyone's entitled to their own thing, but to actually bully someone out of a role is quite sad, really.
Yeah, and it can have long-lasting effects on not only that person but their career as well. So I have no idea what Star Wars is going to do from that point. If she does indeed leave Episode 9, that's going to really punch her a hole in what we could have had as a very interesting... what I was hoping for was the whole kind of... I know I'm not going to say, oh, you know, it's terrible that she's leaving and that's ruining Star Wars for me, because at the end of the day, this is self-preservation for her, and if she believes that leaving Star Wars is the right thing to do and it will help her, then by all means she should do that. But at the end, also, slight side note, I was hoping for in Episode 9 that kind of jealousy thing with Rey, where she wasn't really interested in Finn, but now Finn's found a new love interest. She kind of had that look in Episode 8.
Yeah.
Because Finn had found someone and now wasn't as interested in her. It was just a friendship after that.
I reckon Rey would have got a Poe Dameron anyway.
Well, yeah, they really kind of homed that in,
So
just with that look.
it'll
But
be like I can't hope for the best, so I have second best sort of thing.
But here's the thing, when Star Wars, these so-called fans, if she does indeed leave, then they're just going to home in on something else to attack. They're not going to be happy until they've... Well, so long as they have... Unless they have something to attack. Because they attack... Well, we're assuming that these are the same people, but I feel fairly confident that there's a vast majority of them who are attacking things like Solo and attacking... various decisions that were made in Star Wars Episode 8, but outside the overall story it was more decisions that were made by people like Kathleen Kennedy and stuff like that. I know that she's not our favourite person, but at the end of the day she's trying to do... Her overall drive is a right one. It's just the way that she goes about it isn't always amazing, but that's
She comes across as very one-sidedly opinionated, which is obviously pissing off a lot of people that are not on the one-sided opinion that she is. No.
So yeah, but that was a sidetrack. But yeah, they're going to continue to do it because that's just kind of what they do now, which is sad. But it was the risk that everyone took in rebooting the Star Wars series at the end of the day.
I mean, hopefully she doesn't leave the film, because it's a bit stupid of a thing to really get bullied off of a film, isn't it? But
well, yeah, but if it's affecting her that much, then again, it's self-preservation.
Even Ryan Johnson made a post about it to stand up for her, really.
Yeah, which is quite right, and it's good that he's done that.
Yeah, and it's a shame more people aren't. Might convince her not to shut down her social media accounts. Which obviously it's not really a massive part of life having social media, but you shouldn't feel inclined.
But no, as an actress, it's very important to have that, because at the end of the day, that's how clients and other people are going to find her portfolios and then get in contact and hire her for other roles.
Yeah, it shouldn't put you off of using it, even though people think they can. But it's crazy, really, isn't it?
It's a rough old fan base. Rough. But anyway, let's dive into the other topic that you wanted to bring up today. No spoilers for Solo in this particular podcast, so we're going to be very careful how we've worded this. But they have started to resurrect old themes from Expanded Universe and also old characters from new canon. So with that said, you came across something in a possible post on a fan page, if I'm correct? What was that?
It is one of the few black men in Star Wars.
Ooh.
Surviving something that should have been fatal.
Yeah, but as we all know, people have a knack of surviving things that should have been fatal.
Jedi. Use the Force to restore your power.
But not just that, I mean, plenty of dark side characters or dark side allied characters, much like, I mean, I don't know if they've reforged General Grievous's origin story, but in original canon he survived something that should have been unbelievably fatal. and then the same with Maul. So yeah, how would you think that he would have survived, and what would you think he'd look like after? Because this is quite a way down the way. Where are we looking now? So this is 10 years now. Yeah, because Eleanor said there's 20 years between. I thought it was only 16, so citation needed there. But there's a fair amount of years, let's say, between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and supposedly Han Solo is meant to be 10 years. I think she was looking through the visual guide and actually said that. So it's 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. So at this point, he's not in his own 10 years older. So he's not going to be decrepit. He's not going to be elderly as such, but he's going to be older.
Be like sort of late 40s, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So in the old canon, he actually survived and had robotic hands, didn't he? Someone caught him on a speeder.
Yeah, I heard about it. I think it was Graham who told me that
hopefully
first time.
That is how he survives. Or somehow uses the Force to sort of cushion the landing, find some sort of place to get robotic hands, and not necessarily even catch his light. He doesn't need his old lightsaber, although it's cool and it's got, BMF written on it. Obviously we know what BMF stands for. But he could easily make a new one, or stop using lightsabers altogether and just use the Force and
he could become like a more hardcore Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Where he kind of scavenges to survive, but Obi-Wan still had kind of like that kind, almost like an uncle or a grandfather feel to him, whereas whereas Mace Windu would have more of a kind of darker, because he was there. He watched all of it happen. He watched Anakin's fall, and he watched Sidious take control and stuff like that. And if he did survive, then he would have watched everything go down on Coruscant. He would have watched the Jedi Temple
I reckon
burning.
he'd still be on Coruscant.
Right, okay.
In the
Well,
underworld.
that would have been. Well, I suppose because the underworld would have been very difficult
Hard to find him. There's so many layers.
Yeah.
He
So
could be a mercenary of some sort.
he could just use the Force just in order to survive. Say if he comes across a couple of pirates that he wants something from, he just use the Jedi mind trick or the Force itself as a.
He was a strong Force user.
He was a very strong Force user, if not on par with Yoda. So
he did use the dark side.
He did, yeah. It was part of his fighting style.
If he doesn't have a lightsaber, he could just use one hand light, one hand dark.
There you go.
How?
So, I mean, I'm all down with the robotic appendage. I mean, obviously, you'd have to have something. Well, I'm not going to say he has to have something, but if he's going to be as strong as he was as a fighter, it would make sense for him to have a robotic appendage to replace the one that he lost when Anakin severed his hand.
Yeah, he would have to have two, wouldn't he? Because he lost both hands, didn't he?
No, just one.
Oh, then he can have one hand, normal one hand robot, even better.
Yeah.
So obviously he would have to get one of them.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have to necessarily be skin coloured.
No.
As we saw with Luke's. It looked pretty cool without it. Or like do.
So yeah, I'd be very down to see Mace Windu's return because he's a fan favourite.
He's pretty cool.
But talking about Jedi who could return, or characters that could return, I think we may have covered this in the past, but as it's a subject topic, let's dive into it a bit more. Character that you'd like to see return that may have died or not had enough screen time and just gone off and did their own thing.
Well, a lot of the Jedi I liked did get killed. So
Yeah, I mean, I was really sad about Plo Koon.
I liked Kaidi Mundi.
Kaidi Mundi, yeah. Kit Fisto, yeah.
Did we see him die?
What, Kit?
Yeah, I can't remember seeing him die.
Yeah, because he was part of the Jedi squad that went to confront Sidious.
Yeah.
He was the only one that was able to at least deflect some
And
of Sidious's attack.
Tin, he was pretty cool.
Yeah, he went down as well, and then a Jedi I'm not too sure of the name of.
I'd like to see more of Saisi Tin.
Because Saisi Tin in the Clone Wars book series, he teamed up with Mace Windu.
Yeah.
They were good friends.
And in the original really bad Clone Wars series, the really bad anime one, he led like a jump pack assault on some droid starships and stuff, wasn't
He did, yes.
That was cool.
So yeah, it was yeah, so you want to see Saisi Tin
It'd be
return?
cool. It's a bit more of the characters you don't see anything of, but
No, where he hasn't had. I mean, but that's.
we know he's dead.
Well, yeah.
Can't really argue with that, but maybe some sort of flashback of Mace Windu or something.
Yeah. Maybe to give more kind of an emotional depth to Mace Windu, because that's something that we didn't really have.
Maybe
was an emotional attachment. We just had an attachment because he was cool.
Maybe it's haunted by leading so many people to their
deaths,
sort of
and not being around in order to stop them.
I mean, he was sort of, in a way, the leader of the Jedi, really, wasn't he? Because he seemed to be the voice of the Jedi Council.
Yeah.
People seemed to respect him and sort of follow his decisions, you know. So maybe he was a sort of de facto ruler of the Jedi, really, you know, like a sort of de facto leader.
So if anyone was really going to hurt about that, it would be him.
Yeah, it's guilt sort of thing, isn't it? Survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
One thing.
That could be quite an interesting thing if he was recovered by someone. I'd imagine he'd be unconscious. Here's how it would play out in my eyes. He's recovered in a flashback scene by not necessarily an ally of the Jedi, but just someone who's kind of neutral.
Yeah.
They take him to the underground part of the city. They don't know what to do with him, and they don't want any overall part in the Great Galactic War, so they leave him with a droid that has a reputation of being able to restore people. Unfortunately, this droid has a bit of a narcissistic thing and enjoys not only fixing people, but watching how people are emotionally affected by some things. So he would have Mace Windu chained up whilst repairing his limb, whilst maybe also screening him holograms or whatever of the Jedi Temple burning, but because he's restrained, he's unable to do anything to stop it, which would then give us more of an emotional attachment to Mace Windu.
Yeah.
And it would show Mace Windu in a new light as well. But then you could have like kind of like the classic King Kong moment where he breaks out of his chains and then uses the Force, because this droids don't have any ability to sense Force users unless they did a midichlorian count, which I don't think is standard protocol for a droid, especially of an Undercity droid.
That's probably not something they have equipped.
So the Mace Windu would then make an escape, maybe in kind of like a Deadpool fashion, and then try and build up allies in the Undercity of Coruscant, which we haven't really seen much of apart from in the Clone Wars. And even in the Clone Wars, it was very kind of kid friendly. With what I've uploaded, it's very clear that that's not
the case.
That's not the case. It's a lot worse than that series would have us believe.
I mean, all sort of monsters and stuff in the very low levels and gang activity.
I mean, he could even become like a Thorin Oakenshield, where he has like a shell of one of the slugs or whatever as like a shield. He's just building armor out of these creatures that he's slaughtered.
Cool.
I mean, I bet there's some art that can be done there.
Maybe he does find his purple lightsaber before
maybe,
he picks up.
But actually, I think that was destroyed, because I'll have to go back again. Citation needed. But in the new Marvel comics, it depicts lightsabers from the Jedi Temple being destroyed in a massive vat. They're set on fire, and Yoda's lightsaber's thrown in there as well. I'd have to have a look through that to see if Mace's
destroyed.
He did, yeah. I mean, the Emperor only used the lightsaber because he believed it mocked the Jedi, so he never used it because he had any kind of attachment to it.
It's mocking them, really, isn't it?
By destroying them with their own weapon.
Their sacred weapons as well, by melting them. That is mocking them in a sense. We've won. Your weapons are destroyed. You have nothing to defend against now, really. Yeah.
So this could be the kind of Mace Windu proving the Empire wrong. It doesn't have to be this glorious, massive story. It could just be something that I like. I like the smaller stories. I liked what they did with Solo, and I like what they did with Rogue One, and I like what they're doing with the Marvel comics and certain things like that, where they're showing these smaller stories that don't necessarily show the bigger characters, whether they're old or new.
Yeah. I mean, in my eyes, I sort of had it that he sort of, you know how people sort of slide down a building and they sort of like, you know, grab onto stuff and then jump down a little bit, all sorts of thing. I imagine he uses his one good hand to sort of like use the Force to grab onto stuff, then he sort of slowly propels himself down. Then he falls, not even necessarily unconscious, but someone takes him and they're sort of like, oh yeah, this guy, you know, unconscious or whatever. Maybe someone takes him to the Undercity and tries to sort of, you know, black market his organs or something, and he breaks.
Well, maybe it could work out exactly the same way as it did in Bespin. I mean, Luke was able to hold on to something, but it took all of his strength, and the fact that he just received that crushing news about Vader and he was probably exhausted from the battle as well. Same with Mace Windu. I'm not saying that he's any less powerful than Luke was in Empire. By God, he was probably significantly more powerful. But still, you have just lost an arm, you have been electrocuted, and you have been flung from a window.
Maybe that's what knocks him unconscious, or that use of force power maybe drains him and he passes out from overuse.
Yeah, but I like the idea of him becoming like a target for the black market and that kind of thing.
And obviously, maybe we don't know if there's a sort of mystical belief of the Force, you know, like maybe people are like, oh, if we eat part of his body, maybe we'll gain force power.
Okay,
Sort of thing,
yeah.
like, you don't know what the Undercity, you know, they're crazy,
Yeah, I mean, they probably
they've
do
never
have
seen
some
daylight.
very kind of obstructive beliefs.
There's obviously a lot of mix of alien species in there.
I mean, there's probably even more cause to believe that kind of belief system exists, because in Star Wars, clearly, word of mouth just doesn't exist. Because at the end of Jedi, it took, 30 years for them to all forget about the Jedi again, and to forget that a battle even took place.
Well, it doesn't seem that during Imperial rule, people actually, you know, like sailors would tell stories and stuff in the real world. It doesn't seem like people in the Empire are
Maybe they're just that scared, which I suppose really kind of adds concrete to the Empire, because that generation would die out possibly within those 10, 20 years, and then a new generation would take hold, but that generation wouldn't have any kind of knowledge of that kind of thing. It would only be the ones that dared to speak out and probably were killed for it.
Over time, stories change, isn't it?
Yeah, so Chinese Whispers,
Kessel Run, I mean, Ray seems to think he did it in 14 parsecs and it's 12.
Yeah.
So things like that, even story shifts, so you never know what could change, really.
No. But yeah, I'd love to see Mace Windu's return. Did I say a character that I wanted to see return?
Yeah,
I don't.
said that,
Oh, okay. I don't want to do like a classic resurgence of a dark side character, because I feel like a lot of fans take that badly, unless it's explained properly, and I don't give myself any kind of credit of being able to explain that kind of stuff properly. So I'd probably say
Count Dooku can't come back, let's put it that way.
no. Although he did come back in the Sons of Dathomir comic citation. I think he came back. Although saying that, his corpse was animated by a Night Sister spirit, so it wasn't technically him. It just utilised his body. Character I'd like to see come back. I think I'd like to see Banaka come back.
Who's Banaka?
He's Padme's right hand man.
What, a security captain?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't realise that was his name. I just thought, his name is Captain.
His name's just
That's all
just
she
Captain.
calls him, Captain.
Remember in oh no, because Banaka, he leaves after Phantom Menace, and then there's another captain. Because Banaka, he has two eyes, whereas the other one has an eye patch.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of that one.
No.
Either or, I'd like to see one of them return, because I love all these kind of fan services that we get with these characters that return, but it doesn't necessarily obstruct the plot. It's just something nice for us who know something, and then for those who want to know, it will then there we go, Captain Typho. Yeah, because I can remember the line that when they're all introduced just before Anakin loses his mind, I'm Captain Typhos of Her Majesty's Security.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a small character's return like that. I mean, it would make a lot of sense if say carrying on with what we've seen in Solo, Han went to Coruscant for whatever reason. I mean, he still has some connections that would allow him access to a planet which is primarily controlled by the Empire, and then he could probably come into contact with people like that.
It'd be interesting to see what his view would be, seeing how he fought with, it was with Padme when she would go to the Senate meetings. He'd have a bit of a clue what's going on, because obviously he's there guarding her in the what do you call that room, sort of like a Senate room, I don't know, sort of congressional conversation room, I don't know, where they have
Frisbee
big
room.
speeches and all the discs are. He'd obviously be there guarding her, so he might have a clue or more of an insight of what's going on in the galaxy at large.
Yeah.
We're not just necessarily say that he didn't go on to be working for the next Senator of Naboo. I mean, if you're good at it, why would you give up, sort of thing?
And he would probably become part of the galactic regime, and then I mean, I dare say a lot of people who weren't killed for being traitors and were taken on by the Empire probably still retained some of their quote-unquote good views,
Yeah.
but probably remained quiet about it. So,
Unlike Admiral Yularen, who became part of the Imperial Secret Service.
he was the admiral in the Clone Wars, wasn't he?
Anakin's Admiral.
And then you see him in A New Hope.
Yeah.
So supposedly he goes up with the Death Star.
Stuff like that you start off good and stay
Because he's
there.
in Rebels, I think.
If
I think he may actually be in Rebels.
If he goes with the Death Star, then I don't think he's in Rebels.
Well, no, because Rebels is before Death Star.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was after the first Death Star.
No, before. Because then that's leading all the way up until the Battle of Scarif.
Nice.
Yeah.
Got a little bit Scarif.
Yeah. I did like, I don't think it's really a spoiler, but there is a mention of Scarif Base, in Solo. So I just love all these little connections
There's
that
a
we're
couple
getting.
other planets they mentioned as well, wasn't there? I can't think where else.
I think they mentioned an area of Scarif, but you're right, there was another area that they mentioned, but I think they mentioned another area of Scarif, and then they talked about a certain area on Scarif.
Yeah.
Because
I feel like they mentioned Jeddah, but I'm not sure.
no, they didn't mention Jeddah,
It's somewhere with a J, I'm sure.
but not Jeddah.
Oh, no. Citation needed.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll necessarily be seing Solo again, because that will
three
be
times the charm,
a fourth time. That'll be a fourth time.
Yeah, I know, 3 times so
Yeah.
far though.
But
Why would you go again?
I don't know. I mean, it was an amazing film, but I will be getting it on DVD and then watching it infinite times.
4 times in such a
from
short
that
space.
point. That was
It's
a
like,
that was an
very
interesting
much.
point, actually. My co-worker Megan, who will hopefully have on the podcast soon, because I've recently piqued her interest about being on the show, but she brought up a point. If you could only have one Star Wars film and all the others didn't exist, so you would have no idea, like, it wouldn't be like, say, all of them disappeared and you would have no idea, you would know about Jedi, so it wouldn't matter, and you'd know about that. All of them disappeared and you would only have one and you wouldn't know anything else, which film would it be? So it wouldn't be episode 2, would it? Or episode 5, because you need that context. The film wouldn't make sense.
See, I want to say Revenge of the Sith, but it's kind of along that line. It wouldn't really make sense.
No,
because
it
you go
was
to
an
the
amazing film, but as a film, you'd be like, "What? Who are all
There's
these
too much
characters?
going
Why
on.
do we care?"
Unless you just have it because it's awesome and a good story with different emotional spins, bit of violence, bit of story, bit of love, bit of romance, bit of betrayal. Or because you can't really do none of them really go without the others, unless you pick New Hope because it's the beginning, which would be the only one that makes sense, really.
Yeah.
Because hypothetically, you could just do it as one film.
Yeah,
Really,
and that was all it was ever meant to be.
So I would say New Hope because it would make the most sense.
Yeah, I would
or
say
Phantom Menace because although I don't like it, it's a beginning. Because then you've obviously got it leads on, and then you obviously go on for like 8 more films. So
yeah, I'd either say A New Hope or Solo, just because there's only one reference in there that is a big shock. But at the end of the day, that is still a big shock to anyone who doesn't know about that and wouldn't even know who that character was or that event or whatever. So it's still a beginning story. It still has all of that exposition that you need in order to completely relearn who this character is and all these other characters. There's no references in there or story arcs that are going to be like, what, we need all of this to make sense.
if you don't know any of the films, then it won't be a difference, really.
Exactly.
That one, like, oh, they talk about other planets. Watch another cool planet in this galaxy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's another cool planet in this galaxy that is in various states.
It would just be like in Star Trek or in Firefly when they mention, oh, this business on this so-and-so planet, and you'd be like, okay, so clearly something went down there. I dare say it'll be explained at another point, but who cares at this point? It's just another cool planet within this universe. So yeah, I'd probably say Solo as well. I know I'm massively a fan of Solo right now, but I just really enjoyed it.
I'd like to see it again.
It was
I
a
think it was good.
very good film, and I'm very glad I've got the visual guide and the art book for it, because it's always nice flicking
We'll
through
have to
that.
pick through that again in another episode.
We will, yeah, because I feel like there are some
There's
topics
a
that
lot.
we
It's a
that we
big
can
one.
raise with that, like some of the art that they depicted, some of the stuff that they wanted to do and didn't end up doing.
Well, maybe they'll recycle them in the next Solo film.
Possibly, yeah.
Or use parts of.
I dare say they may do, because that was something that I saw in, I think I've mentioned it in a podcast with you before, there is stuff that's recycled from the Episode 7 art book, which we then see in Star Wars Episode 8, small things like the bigger mouse droid and stuff like that. So I dare say that we probably would get some resurgence of old art that we've had in the past. But who knows?
Who knows? Is there any other topics you want to bring up today, or?
Well, we've still got 3 or 4 minutes left, so I wasn't sure if you'd had any more ideas towards our Star Wars Episode 9
Ooh, I had a little idea of a space battle, but it's not really much.
No, go for it.
Well, obviously we know the Millennium Falcon is pretty much the only Rebel Alliance ship left now.
Yeah.
So I imagine when the Imperial fleet catches up, what's going to happen? People are going to start shooting at it. Not necessarily, obviously, they won't destroy it because then what's the point of the whole film? Like everyone's dead. But I imagine that some rebellion allies might pop up with a sort of system defense fleet of their own. Obviously, it's got to be pirates. You don't want to get into your planet. And you're going to have some sort of small fleet to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe the Rebel Alliance has done that to help give power to the people. Maybe they've sort of diverted resources to say, here, have your own fleet, small one at that, blah blah blah. Defend yourself against First Order or pirates or whatever. Maybe a few of their allies will come with bigger ships to help defend them, and they go into a carrier and get taken off where else, safety.
That's quite an interesting point, actually, because it was something that was preached pretty much throughout Episode 8, was things that were considered as symbols of hope throughout the galaxy. They may not know of the overall war that was being waged at that point, but the rebel symbol, or the resistance symbol, I suppose, at this point, is a universally recognised symbol of hope. So maybe the Millennium Falcon, a thing of legend at this point, would be considered that. So if a pirate force or a neighbouring resistance force or something like that saw that the Millennium Falcon was in trouble, they would then see that as a symbol of hope, and then mass, because of its reputation probably being exaggerated at that point, they would mass to do something about it.
No one really wants to be enslaved, do they? People
No.
obviously seeing the rebellion in the first place and the resistance, people will obviously see. This is what I want in Episode 9. I want the rebellion to resurge and to become very bigger than where it was, but I want them doing stuff.
Well, yeah,
So
because
obviously what's the point?
that's something that caused quite a lot of issue with Episode 7 and even the existence of this new trilogy, is that it kind of put a damper on the success of Episode 6,
Yeah.
where we always thought that then, okay, so then the rebellion would go off and then they would create the new Galactic Republic, and then that would then be sustainable until the Yuuzhan Vong came along and destroyed everything. But that hasn't really been the case. It's taken 30 years and it looks like they've been just sitting around doing nothing.
I mean, obviously the First Order have probably been hitting them hard as well, but
Yeah.
obviously Starkiller Base, destroying the new capital of the Republic,
Hmm.
all that sort of thing. But what we don't know is how much rebellion was on the new Republic capital, first of all. Could be
I mean, the film would
Maybe
lead
this
us
was
to
not many.
believe that there was a fair amount of stuff that
Yeah.
was lost as a result of those 5 planets being destroyed.
It's
But
just like,
with that scene that you've depicted, I would love to see a very similar scene to what we got in Serenity, where where Serenity kind of drags a load of ships along. Maybe kind of like a similar thing where we had with Poe Dameron, except it's the Millennium Falcon, and then just all these resistance transports and pirate transports and all these things. We could
Yeah.
have so many ships from old lore that just is like, oh, this is just a space full of fan service, but it's beautiful. We've got more Hammerhead
well, we
gunships,
know they
and we've
used
got
them.
and we've got more ships that are maybe like some of the ugly ships which have been brought up in the Poe Dameron graphic novels. They were redone in new canon, so it's not
Well,
unusual to think that they may come back.
You'd think as well, the rebellion being in the state it is, they would use what they can. So
Exactly, so there probably
Comes with
are a lot of
flyers and
proxy
ships
ships. We'll
and-
see all these kind of unique. Imagine that in the concept art book. If they say, right, we want some ugly ships, that'd be amazing. We can
Yeah.
have all the AT-ST TIE fighters and the
if it's functional and space proof, then why not use it?
exactly, and it will just show all these. I think that's something that we don't really get in Star Wars. Everything's very kind of
It's
uniform.
narrow, isn't it? It's a narrow view.
You get the Galactic Republic, who have all these ships but they're all the same, and then you get the Separatist Alliance and they have all these ships but they're all the same, and then you get the the Rebels, still okay, not as established, but all their ships are the same.
Yeah, I mean,
And then you get the Empire and all their ships are the
you
same.
never see the rarer classes. Like you hardly ever see a TIE bomber.
No,
And
I think you
they're
only
quite-
ever see them in Star Wars Episode 5.
They're quite common, to be fair. You never see them. You never see TIE defenders or TIE interceptors. You never really see any of the rarer ships.
No,
Just the
so
Empire as an example, really. Like
yeah.
clones, you never really see any. You don't see many A-wings. Don't see any V19 torrents, although shame, they're really cool.
Yeah.
Don't see any of the prototype Arc ones where it's got just the plain 2 wings without the foils.
Hmm.
You know, don't see any of the cool ones other than in really the animated series a little bit. But
Yeah, so it would be nice to see some of those, and I dare to say, if they did that in Episode 9, that would make quite a few people happy.
obviously, all we see is that uniformed uniform view, because then it's something to keep your eye on, isn't it?
Yeah, and
If there's all random ships and all sorts, you'd be looking at the whole screen, like, eyes all over the place, I suppose.
But we've had that now in Solo. There was a certain area, and you probably know where I'm talking about, where there were loads of artifacts and things that really kept our eyes all over the place. And when we went back and looked in the visual dictionary and looked on fan videos and things, we found out that there were lots of little Easter eggs and things there. So we will finish up this episode of the podcast. So thank you very much for joining me, Harrison.
Nice.
And whether you are Jedi or Sith, Rebels or Empire, CIS or Galactic Republic, Resistance or First Order, we hope you have a very good day, evening, whatever you're doing. May the Force be with you. See you guys next week.